why? The body of water separating southern England from northern France is called the English Channel. The ferry crossing from Dover in London to Calais in France takes about an hour. It is a pleasant journey that people undertake almost every day. I've been on it many times myself. But this crossing has an amazing story to tell, a very important history from the days of the Second World War. It is the story of how the English Channel became the gateway to liberating Western Europe. The world had become aware of the grave threat that Adolf Hitler posed. 3 world leaders were in consultation as to how to deal with the situation. President Roosevelt of the US, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, and Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the UK. When the US entered the war, Hitler feared there would be an invasion from the west coast of Europe. So in 1942, he began the construction of the gigantic Atlantic Wall, a line of fortifications that ran almost 4,000 miles along the western border of Europe. American Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower was appointed to lead the campaign against Germany. There was frenzied activity by the Allied forces across the Channel. The Germans spotted this and began to observe all their preparations. They saw airfields being prepared and airplanes all lined up, and they began their defense of Calais. But what the Germans did not realize was that this was all a ploy, a deception. The airfields were phony, fake, and the planes were all inflatable balloons. The 6th of June 1944 was the decisive day. The day the Allied forces would launch the largest amphibious invasion in military history to break Nazi control and liberate Western Europe. Early morning around 3:30 a.m., an armada of 7,000 ships began to silently cross the Channel. The weather was not great, but the covert plan had to be carried out. 3 million soldiers were involved in this operation. On board the vessels were 130,000 men who were being protected by air cover from 20,000 planes. An hour later, Allied bombers began a relentless offensive. At dawn, the soldiers landed on the coast of France, but not Calais, where the Germans were expecting them. Instead, they arrived at Normandy. The unbreakable Atlantic Wall began to crumble as German offenses were overrun. Communication Hubs, roads, railways, and bridges were all systematically destroyed. By the end of June 6th, or D-Day as it is called, they knew that victory was sure. That day, June the 6th, marked the end for Nazi Germany, and the war had been won on this day. Although the fighting did continue after that until December 6th, June the 6th was the day the war had been won. By the 6th of December, everything was over. So remember these two dates. June the 6th, D-Day, was when the offensive began and was decisively won. The fighting did continue, and then finally, the other date, December 6th, was when the fighting finally ended. So remember these two dates because they are going to make us understand something very important about the atonement. We are looking at Calvary from different angles. Today, let us look at what the cross meant to Satan. The Bible talks of the fall of Satan, the defeat of Satan, and the final judgment of Satan. To understand this truth, we need to go right back to the beginning of creation. In that boundless dawn, before human origin, were the angels, beings of light, woven from the breath of heaven. Among these angels was one imperial figure, a regal cherub of unparalleled radiance. He was a spectacle of sheer beauty and awe. His very form glittered with emerald and opalescent fire. His voice, like waves of pearls, echoed like a clarion song while the seraph listened. In that sacred court of heaven, every winged creature whispered in awe, "It's the morning star." Clothed in the perfection of wisdom, Lucifer stood at the throne's right hand as a guardian of the holy mount. The skies rippled with his songs, and each constellation gleamed with the reflection of his artistry. He was there at the beginning, at the birth of the earth, when morning stars sang together in harmony, and mountains bowed, and oceans swelled, and the newborn earth felt the pulse of his joyful chord. He was the chief angel, the worship leader who marshaled the angelic choirs in exultant praise. Standing there in close proximity to the Almighty, this glorious and noble archangel stood tall, the sapphires on his breastplate glittering in heaven's radiance. All the other angels watched him with glowing admiration. And yet, unknown to anyone, within his beating heart was growing a mysterious thought like a little seed. Lucifer began to gaze upon the one place that he had no access to, the throne of the Almighty. He gazed wistfully, wondering what it would be like. And his own thoughts began to whisper to him, "Why remain here when you were created to ascend to higher glory?" When rumors of a new creation called man began to spread among the angels, a mysterious shadow passed over the face of Lucifer. When he beheld the love that God had for this new creation, the heart of Lucifer, once pure as crystal, now took on a dark distortion. His beauty became tarnished with ambition, and his wisdom became a ladder to his own exaltation. He summoned legions with secret promises of sovereignty, weaving dissonance into heaven's melody. And then came the rebellion. The heavens began to quake. Wings that once flared with righteousness now beat in furious revolt, blurring against the firmament. Lightning arced as seraph clashed with seraph until the morning star, whose name was Lucifer, the bringer of light, stood alone against the throne. The Almighty's voice roared like thunder, and in that moment, grace withdrew. When Satan sinned, he could not remain even for a moment in heaven. He knew instantly he was damned forever and doomed to spend eternity in the lake of fire, which was specially made for him. There was no second chance given to him. He was too proud to repent anyway. As in Milton's Paradise Lost, he would say, "Better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven." As Lucifer realized he had no future and no hope, and that he was doomed for eternity, a burning anger against God began to well in his breast. This is an anger that I do not want to describe or even know. It is too deep, too dark, and too evil, and it is best we do not probe too much into it either. Anger of such terrifying intensity cannot remain passive. It seeks vengeance. It will hit back. Jesus looks back at this day and says, "I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning." With a final cry that cracked the soul of the cosmos, Lucifer plummeted through the void. His silver light blackened, his nails turned to talons, his beauty to beastliness, and his song curdled into a serpentine hiss. Fallen from glory, he became the adversary, twisted into a horned and hideous creature of the torrid inferno. Thus the once luminous angel, cast now beyond the reach of mercy, bears the name Satan, the accuser, forever stained by the chalice of his own pride. Where once was heard the voice like waves of pearls, now his voice of anger and hatred echoes down the labyrinthine caverns of the dark abyss. I will have my revenge. I am Lucifer, the morning star, the light bearer, and the archangel of the skies. I will break your heart, Almighty, by tearing away man from you. Adam and Eve began to spend their early days in the garden of that ancient paradise. They did not have any sense of fear. They did not even know the meaning of fear. In their unfallen state, they were totally free from all anxiety and suspicion and fear. So they were totally unaware of the shadowy figure of the cunning serpent slithering in the darkness, biding his time. Like a volcano waiting to erupt, the lava kept burning inside his heart. He was waiting for the right time to strike against God and savor the revenge that he longed to have. And then he struck. Genesis 3 tells us of that old story of the fall of man. The serpent deceived Eve, and the innocent couple were ruined. They rebelled against God, and death entered the world. This seemed to be the victory that Satan had promised all his demons. The defeat of God's plan and the death of man was hell's decisive victory, and a shout of triumph resounded as the demons partied and praised Satan. While the demons were still celebrating the victory of the devil, suddenly something unexpected happened in the Garden of Eden. The very first prophecy in the Bible came forth from the lips of the Almighty. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. The prophecy is that the seed of the woman will triumph over Satan. We have already considered this ancient prophecy in the Bible study, the day God declared war. God was prophesying exactly how Satan would be defeated and his head would be crushed. Paul says, "But when the right time came, God sent his Son, born of a woman, subject to the law." Every time I read this verse, I used to wonder why Paul said, "born of a woman," as if there was another way to be born. Now I understand. By saying, "born of a woman," Paul was confirming that Jesus was the seed of the woman that had been prophesied. God had sent Jesus to set us free through the cross. And this is why Satan does not want us to know about the atonement. He is constantly trying to twist and pervert the story of the cross. And when churches no longer preach the gospel clearly, they are contributing to Satan's success. Members of churches may think they know deep doctrine, but in reality, they are blind to the greatness of the work of the atonement. And that is why in such churches, great emphasis is given to the devil. Preachers magnify the enemy by giving him undue attention. Not too long ago, a prayer list was given to the members of a church in order to prepare for their upcoming conference. And this is what it roughly looked like. Pray against the spirit of division. Pray against the spirit of sickness. Pray against the spirit that causes accidents. Pray against the spirit of backsliding. Pray against the spirit of confusion. Pray against the spirit of bitterness and unforgiveness. All the points were focusing on the enemy. This prayer list was indirectly magnifying the power of the enemy. There wasn't a single point. Pray that God may open our eyes to the greatness of our God, that He might restore the love of God in our hearts, that we may truly become a church that honors God and glorifies Him. No, there was nothing like that. And this is why we must be clear about the atonement of Christ. Last week, we looked at the cross through the eyes of the Father. But the cross is more than just the reconciliation of humanity and God. The cross has profound implications for Satan. The New Testament portrays Satan as a tempter, a deceiver, a captor, an accuser, and destroyer. Ever since he was cast out of heaven, he swore revenge. But the Bible also tells us that the devil was decisively confronted and ultimately defeated by Christ's sacrificial death and resurrection. Through the atonement, Satan became a defeated adversary. Before I continue, let me show you some of the verses that proclaim Satan's defeat on the cross. He canceled the record of the charges against us and took it away by nailing it to the cross. In this way, he disarmed the spiritual rulers and authorities. He shamed them publicly by his victory over them on the cross. The time for judging this world has come, when Satan, the ruler of this world, will be cast out, and when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself. He said this to indicate how he was going to die. The Son of God came to destroy the works of the devil. Then I heard a loud voice shouting across the heavens, "It has come at last, salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ, for the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to earth, the one who accuses them before our God day and night. And they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony, and they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die." In one final verse, because God's children are human beings made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil who had the power of death. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. Jesus came to destroy the devil who had the power of death. Of all the fears that grip the hearts of people, none is greater than the fear of death. This is known as thanatophobia. Death is one of the most distressing topics on earth. The fear of death can be truly horrifying. It grips the heart and fills them with anxiety and despair. People try to conquer it using psychotherapy and other methods. Satan, knowing our weakness, plays upon our fear of death. And that is why the Bible says that death has a sting, and that sting is sin. So, there is a question we have to address. We heard some of those verses about how Jesus defeated the devil at the cross. Now, if these verses are true, then why is Satan still around? Why does he still have power? Why must we still fear him? Isn't this all very confusing? On one hand, we are told that Satan was defeated at the cross. On the other hand, we are warned by Paul to put on the whole armor. We are told that Jesus destroyed him on the cross, and yet Peter tells us to be on guard because the devil is roaming around as a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. So tell me, what is true? Is Satan defeated or not? Can we lay down our weapons, or must we still keep fighting? Let us look at what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 11 and 12. Put on all of God's armor, so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. These are Paul's words in his closing chapter to the Ephesian church. Paul warns about an epic battle in high places. This dimension known as high places is often wrongly imagined to be mere atmospheric space or some galaxy several billion miles away. But in truth, this battle is taking place in the spiritual world. There are various demonic angels called principalities, powers, rulers who have been assigned specific tasks in their war against us. And these leading angels have under them hundreds of thousands of demons who will fulfill their commands. Indeed, these are the spirits behind sickness and division and violence and crime and every temptation. The leader at the top of the hierarchy is the great red dragon, who is Satan himself. He is described as the prince of the power of the air, or more literally, the prince of the aerial host. He is called the devil, in Greek, diabolos, a name used always in the singular and always only of the leader. The word diabolos means malignant accuser. His job is to accuse God's children night and day. It also means the separator and slanderer, and this is what he has been doing ever since his fall. So the question now is, what really happened at the cross? Was the ancient prophecy fulfilled or not? Indeed, it was fulfilled. Because there on the cross, Christ, the woman's seed, crushed his head like it was foretold. We read in 1 John 3:8 that Jesus came to destroy his power. The word destroy means to actually render powerless, to dissolve the power of the enemy. Jesus pulled the plug on Satan. And thus, according to Christian theology, Jesus defeated Satan, sin, and death through his sacrifice on the cross and his resurrection. While we believe that his victory was decisive, yet somehow we find it unreal and unreachable. And that's why some ask, if Jesus died for the salvation of the whole world and Satan was defeated, then why is he still deceiving people and taking them to hell? Good question. And this is where we bring in that simple but powerful analogy we heard at the beginning of this episode about the Second World War and the famous D-Day. Let's recall what we heard. The 6th of June 1944 was the day when the Allies, that is the US, the British and Canadian forces, reached the shores of Normandy in northern France. Once they landed and fought, the war was over. Victory was absolutely certain because German defeat was certain. Days later, the fighting continued, and the Allies even lost soldiers to German attack. But finally, on December 6th, it was all over. So yes, just like this, Calvary is our D-Day. Calvary is our 6th of June when Jesus fought for us and gave us the victory. That is our D-Day. The war may be over, but the fighting is not. Satan is still around, and he's not quiet. He's going to be busy even beyond our days, beyond the rapture, all the time trying to take revenge. So where are we now? We are in the interim period between the cross and the rapture. The cross is our June 6th and the rapture is our December 6th. And in this time, we must be clear how we regard Satan and his defeat at Calvary. Satan is still around, but his power has been taken away. He may still prowl like a roaring lion, but his teeth have been pulled. He may hurl accusations, but they no longer can hurt those who find their identity in Christ, who was crucified for us and rose again. When Satan points to our fallenness, our depravity, saying that we are children of the first Adam, the fallen man, we must point to our new identity in the last Adam, Christ, the risen man. Our weapon against Satan is not rebuking him or kneeling down or raising our hands or offering 100 praises or using some random verses to terrify him. He doesn't care about these things. But the one weapon that Satan trembles at is the power of the cross. There is power in the blood of Jesus. There is power in the name of the resurrected Son of God. And that is why in Revelation 12 we read about the man-child. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. In Colossians 2:15 we read how Jesus disarmed the enemy at Calvary. Disarm means the gun that he was pointing at you was emptied of its bullets. For Satan, the cross is not only the point of defeat, but also a revelation of his weakness, of his impotence. Paul says, Satan was made a public spectacle. The powers and principalities of darkness were rendered objects of shame and derision, and the children of God walked free. Calvary, therefore, was the D-Day, Satan's destruction, his June 6th, the day of his defeat. So let me say it again. The war is over, but the fighting is not over. So we must still be cautious, sober, and vigilant. Now, some may rightfully wonder, why did God allow Satan to still fight against us after his defeat at the cross? Why couldn't Satan once and for all be defeated and destroyed and chained and cast away to hell? Why is he still allowed to tempt us? Why is he still allowed to roam around? Let me give you two reasons. First, God allows this continued struggle in order to help us grow in spiritual maturity. Just like soldiers need to train for battle, and boxers and other sports stars spend hours every day in grueling practice sessions and exercises, facing temptation and opposition is vital for us because it can deepen our faith, refine our character, and draw us closer to God. Secondly, let us remember that God created us with free will. And that is why the triumph of the cross is not automatically thrust upon us. Some think that the victory of Calvary is automatically applied to everyone like gravity. We know how the gravitational pull of the earth acts on each and every object. But we are not objects. We are people with a free will to either receive or reject what God is offering us through Jesus Christ. God honors our free will, whereas Satan exploits it. Dear friend, understand that people are not dragged to heaven or hell against their will. God is offering us the victory of the cross. and we must receive it. But Satan, he's actively deceiving people, lying to them, that they might rise up just like Adam and Eve in rebellion against God. Even though Satan knows he was defeated at the cross, he still fights with us. So we must beware that we can rearm the devil with our sinful compromises. And that is why Paul says, we do not want Satan to gain advantage over us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So we must beware that we can rearm the devil with our sinful compromises. We are responsible for our choices. Nonetheless, let us not exalt the devil. Let us exalt our God and the atonement and the victory of Calvary. Christ's victory on the cross was a bruising defeat of Satan, and he knows it. Recall what happened on June 6, 1944. It was named Operation Overlord. Allied Supreme Commander General Dwight Eisenhower led 3 million men, 13,000 aircraft, 2,500 landing craft, and 1,200 warships, and a large variety of tanks, all towards Normandy. There were 5 landing areas: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. The battle was swift and fierce. There was some stiff resistance in Omaha, but by the end of the day, it was clear that the Allies were the victors. The footage is still available, and you can watch it at your convenience. The crushing victory of Christ's finished work on the cross is as real as that day, the 6th of June 1944. And therefore, by faith, let us willingly submit to God, for it is in our submission to Him that we are clothed with power. Then we can resist the devil, who is the defeated foe, and he will flee from us, not because we are mighty or our prayers are powerful, but because he can see that we have understood the victory of the atonement, our D-Day. And we also know that surely his December 6th is coming. And thus the atonement of Christ on the cross is for Satan the ultimate catastrophe. He is overthrown, outmaneuvered, exposed, and forever bound by the event he sought to orchestrate. His final destination is the lake of fire. And thus, the cross, far from being a moment of satanic victory, is the day Satan was destroyed. And this is a truth celebrated and applied by Christ's followers in every age and tradition. The imperial figure of Diabolos stands silhouetted against the shimmering crimson skies of Egyptian dawn. He scans the horizon as he thinks of the future of the planet. He shakes his head. Anger rages in his heart as the defeat of the cross lingers on his mind with a pungent and acidic taste. He knows his fate is sealed and he can do nothing. His face twists in a snarl as he mutters to himself, "Well, I'm waiting for the day when the first seal is broken."